This is World War II Crash Course here. War in the Pacific by Chase, Matthias, and Alex.
First thing was the Allies stemming the Japanese. The main priority of the war was to defeat the Nazis.
The word exactly. Me from the future, weren't the Nazis really powerful? Oh, me from the past, the Nazis were really powerful, but they did lose the war. And they do not exist today, so...
Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor caused us to jump in the war earlier than we had thought. Unfortunately, they missed our fleets, subs, and aircraft carriers.
Colonial James Doolittle led 16 bombers in a Pearl Harbor-style raid that dampened Japanese spirits and lifted American spirits.
1842, at the Battle of the Coral Sea, the main allies were the Americans and the Australians. They fought the Japanese off in their drive towards Australia in a 5-day battle.
Another important battle was the Battle of Midway, when the Americans translated a Japanese letter to know their next move was to attack Midway Island. So Chester Nimitz moved to defend the island. On June 3, 1942, his scout planes found the Japanese fleet. Americans sent torpedo planes and dive bombers to attack, and caught the Japanese off guard, who still had their planes on the deck. The Japanese lost a total of 4 carriers, a cruiser, and 250 planes. This battle is known as the turning point in the Pacific War.
The Allies decided to go on the offensive. In 1942, 19,000 troops stormed Guadalcanal. 6 months later, the Japanese abandoned it. After that, it was then called the Island of Death. It was Japan's first defeat on land. It continued towards Japan. In 1944, 178,000 troops and 738 ships converged on Leyte Island.
The Japanese threw their entire fleet into the Battle of Lake Gull. 427 kamikaze pilots embarked on suicide missions, sinking 16 ships and damaging another 80. The battle was a disaster for Japan. In 3 days of battle, it lost 3 battleships, 4 carriers, 13 cruisers, and almost 500 planes.
Time now for the pole barn of mysteries! Oh, looks like we have here an 8mm Mauser Model 98, 1944 model. It's used by the Germans in World War II. And it's got a wooden stock instead of a plastic stock like we have today. Iwo Jima was known as the most heavily defended spot on Earth with 20,700 Japanese troops. When Iwo Jima was attacked, 6,000 Marines died and only 200 Japanese survived. William Manchester, a writer, described it as an ugly, smelly glob of cold lava squatting in an ocean.
After the Battle of Iwo Jima, the Battle of Okinawa was another important battle in World War II. In April 1945, the Marines invaded Okinawa, and the Japanese unleashed more than 1,900 kamikaze attacks on Allies. The Japanese sunk 30 ships and damaged more than 300, killing almost 5,000 men. After the Battle of Iwo Jima, more than 7,600 Americans had died. Japanese lost 110,000.
The Manhattan Project was the development of the atomic bomb. The first test was in Alamogordo, New Mexico on July 16, 1945. You could see a blinding flash from 180 miles away. Truman decided to use the bomb on the Japanese in Hiroshima.
The main scientist in developing the atomic bomb was J. Robert Oppenheimer. On August 29th, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay released an atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy. Hiroshima was an important military center for the Japanese. 43 seconds after Little Boy was dropped, every building in the city collapsed to dust. The Japanese still didn't surrender. 3 days later, they dropped Fat Man on Nagasaki. 200,000 people died, and on September 2nd, formal surrender ceremonies took place on the USS Missouri.
At the Yalta Conference, Stalin proposed to divide Germany into 4 occupation zones that would have gave 1 each for the Soviets, Americans, British, and French. Churchill disagreed, and Roosevelt wanted Stalin to support the creation of the United Nations.
Nuremberg war trials. The discovery of the death camps led Allies to put 24 Nazi leaders on trial. In the end, 12 of the 24 Nazis were sent to death. In lesser trials, nearly 200 Nazis were found guilty for war crimes. Many people believe that the Nazis got off too easy.
On the Japanese side of the trials, 7 Japanese were sent to death, 1,100 were sent to prison. Eventually, the Japanese introduced a free market practice that led to a remarkable economic recovery. The Japanese apparently agreed to this day that their constitution is known as the MacArthur Constitution.
Pacific War was important because it gave the Allies momentum to win World War II.